What's going on, Guardians? It's Tizzle here, and at long last, I'm bringing you a much requested build video on young Ahamkara's spine. My YouTube comments have had people suggesting Yas to me for years now, and then they were hit with a nerf and basically became useless in PvE. But then they got buffed again, and once again, people were asking me on YouTube and even on Twitch, where I've started streaming recently, to give them a shot. Here's the thing, I didn't touch them for a long time because, in my opinion, trip mine grenades suck ass in PvE. But even if I think something is bad, I can't write it off entirely until I try it out. So I did. I took them through a whole host of content, and now I'm bringing you this video. Just look at the background footage. Look at how many grenades I'm throwing. This ability spam is crazy. I spam about 17 grenades in a minute and a half. That's a grenade roughly every 5 seconds. Can you believe that shit? Like, holy hell, this must be the best build in the game with that kind of firepower. So let's jump into the nitty gritty of the build and see how I am doing it. We start with the exotic young Ahamkara's spine. They have the exotic Wish Dragon Teeth, which increases trip mine grenade duration and blast radius, and then ability damage also grants trip mine energy. And the Destiny Data Compendium gives us even more info. The most crucial part of this info is at the bottom, where solar ability hits grant 33% trip mine grenade ability. So if we run this with Knife Trick, this actually throws out a fan of 3 blades, so if we land our volley, we can get our grenade back pretty much instantly, allowing us to spam our melees over and over. Throw in a Gambler's Dodge, and we can dodge near an enemy to get our melee back, and then chuck out another melee to pretty much instantly restore our grenade again. And then the loop just continues. And there's even more ways we can build into getting our melees back to feed our grenades, and keep this loop going. The aspect Knock 'em Down allows our solar melee to fully recharge if we get a kill with it while radiant. So we can pair this with Ember of Torches, where our powered melee attacks make us radiant, and then we basically get permanent uptime on our melee as well, as long as we're getting kills with it. So anytime we don't have a grenade, we throw our melee, get grenade energy, throw grenade, throw melee, rinse and repeat. And if we run Gunpowder Gamble, this also counts as a solar ability, so if we get a GPG, we just chuck that and boom, we'll have our grenade back. And same with our super. We honestly have so many ways to feed our grenade energy, it's crazy. So now that I have laid out how this gameplay loop works, let me debunk why this build is shit. Yes, if you are still here, then this is not the build video you think it is. Rather, this is going to be a learning opportunity and a warning to watch out for clickbait videos on YouTube. You see, the reality is, my initial apprehension about the build was sound. Trip mine grenades do suck in PvE. So even though you can spam them like crazy, what the hell good is it if they are awful? This is a clickbait build that is designed to make casual players feel like they have a good build because it allows them to spam their abilities. I've made many ability spam builds, and I think all of them are better in endgame content than this one. Sunbracer surely is, as is Pyrogale Titan, and hell, even on Hunter, I think Ophidius Spathe is far more useful in endgame content than young Ahamkara's spine, and I will detail why right now. Like I said, I took it through a host of activities from Expert Onslaught to GMs to Solo Master Lost Sectors, and in the background right now, I'm going to place side by side of my best young Ahamkara Spine Master Lost Sector clear next to my first attempt with the exact same weapon loadout but using Celestial Nighthawk instead. My best Yas clear was 3.5 minutes, and my first attempt with Nighthawk was 2.5 minutes. Same weapon, loadouts and mods and everything. I just switched exotics and supers. And let me be clear, my 3.5 minute Yas run was after probably 5 attempts where it took longer or I died at some point in the run. So this was my smoothest run. The Celestial run was my first try. And sure, a 1 minute difference may not seem like that much, but this is one of the quickest lost sectors in the game. This difference will only grow over the course of a longer activity. A minute may not seem long, but the difference in time between these two runs was actually 40%, and that is substantial. So if you could solo a GM with Celestial in 20 minutes, that same run will take you closer to 30 minutes using young Ahamkara's spine. God, I love math, don't you? So why is this? Well, the whole engine that makes the young Ahamkara build run falls off very quickly in endgame content. The whole thing with Knock 'em Down granting your melee back with melee final blows, yeah, that doesn't work so well as enemies get a bit tankier. Sure, you don't have to run Knife Trick, but this is the most common melee that people tend to run with this build. Next is, like I said, trip mines suck ass. They have pretty minimal ad clear, even with the increased blast radius that Yas provides, and their single target damage is nothing amazing either. I could have ran a healing grenade on Celestial Nighthawk and been far better off, as having healing on demand allows you to play more aggressively, hence speeding up the clear time. But for the sake of comparison, I wanted to change as little as possible to prove my point. So back to trip mines, especially in endgame content, if you miss your trip mine grenade, your build falls apart completely. Yes, I did say earlier that you can use GPG or your super to help refund that grenade energy, but these won't always be there to assist you. And in endgame content, it is also harder to dodge near enemies to get your melee back because you may just end up dying. So if you can't close the gap to get your melee and your grenade missed, then you're kind of just shit out of luck until your abilities come back. So now it is like you're running no build at all. Good builds come in a few different varieties. You have high ease of use builds where you don't have to think too much about the build and it just kind of does the work for you. Or you have high risk, high reward where it demands great execution to get the most out of it, but if you do, you are highly rewarded. The best builds, especially for casual players, is high ease of use with great reward. The best example is the Prismatic Getaway Artist build on Warlock. You pop one grenade and then you get Arc Souls plus a Bleak Watcher and then you get Devour going and you have your grenade back right away and the play loop continues. The best high risk, high reward is Consecration Titan. To use it to its max effectiveness actually requires great skill. Special Hero and Sutek make this look super easy, but it is not. You have to know what you are doing, but if you play it properly, you are greatly rewarded, as every GM speedrun since the final shape has been while using this setup and for good reason. The worst builds are high risk, low reward, and young Ahamkaras falls into this category. Even if you pull off the wombo combos where you're chaining melee into grenade into melee into grenade, it still isn't really even enough damage to kill a champion in one stun. Not solo anyways. So what the fuck good is it? I found it was honestly easier in high-end content to just not play the game loop, to just use my grenades as effectively as possible when ads were grouped up to help supplement my damage. If I tried the wombo combo on a champ, it was usually far worse than just using my weapons to kill it, and that's the god honest truth. But Tizzle, people have used young Ahamkara's spine to solo Caretaker. Yes, true, but there is a lot more going on under the hood to make that happen. OnPam did it back in the Witch Queen days when we had a different mod system, and people like Curly Fry did it after Lightfall when we got the loadout system and the new mod system. I won't break those builds down in depth as that would be enough to fill a whole separate video, but there's many reasons that Yas works for that encounter specifically and does not represent how strong this build is as a whole. That raid has a mod called Into the Light which increases the damage and recharge rate of your grenades, and being a grenade based build, this is wonderful. Additionally, to solo a raid boss you need tons of ability spam as weapons will run out of ammo long before you can deal enough damage. Finally, raid combat is just not as hard as Master Lost Sectors or GMs. Master raids are, but solo raid bosses are usually always on the base version. Which brings me to another huge problem with this build, and that is survivability. Even when running Ember of Resolve where solo final blows cure you, I found this build to be incredibly squishy. And I don't really think it's a skill issue. I understand the build and how to use it, and I can solo GM, so I'm probably better than the average player. So it's kind of just a fact. And like I said, I found when I was trying to get the most out of the build, it was very difficult in endgame. So you would either force the issue to get your abilities back and end up dying, or have to sit back and wait for your abilities because you couldn't run it as intended. Even in Expert Onslaught, this build struggled mightily. As the power level delta increases, the effectiveness of this build decreases. So be wary of YouTubers when they say a build is broken or the best in the game. Pay attention to the content that they're running it in. I made this build look strong as hell at the start of the video in a regular Lost Sector, and that was on purpose, to draw you in and make you believe it was good. Mactic's original video on this build has over 500,000 views on it, and it says it destroys everything, and in brackets he says raids, GMs, and more. Another video with 200,000 views says it one-shots everything in the thumbnail. And finally, the last one says the best Solar Hunter build is back. I don't have too much issue with the last one because best is subjective. If you are running around patrol in regular Lost Sectors, then it probably goes pretty hard. But again, I would say Ophidia Spade would be better in low-end content, and if you get into high-end content, Celestial Nighthawk is the GOAT. It's not flashy, but being able to dispatch a champion in a GM in one shot from any distance is extremely powerful, and then you get 33% of your super back to boot. Now, I don't want this to come across as me hating on Mactix in particular. He is just the biggest build YouTuber with the furthest reach. So I feel he has a duty, especially at this point, to just be honest. We all do clickbait to a degree. I just did it with my shotgun build saying it destroys everything. But it is genuinely 10 times better in Onslaught than this build is. But it would obviously fall off in something like a GM, especially a solo GM. But in a team GM, you could probably make it work if you played smart. I try to talk about the strengths and weaknesses of builds when I make videos. I try and just be honest about what the build excels at. I'm not trying to gatekeep build content or say that the only good builds must be capable of soloing GMs. Far from. I used to have that mentality to a degree, and Cool Guy actually changed my mind on that. I love his content, and he made one about a year ago saying how good Severance Enclosure was. I scoffed at the thought because I'd done my own testing and found the explosion from Severance to be very weak in stuff like Master Lost sectors. So I was really curious what he liked about it, and because I love his content, I watched the whole video and he was right. And he said something that stuck with me, and ever since then I've always kept that in mind. That not every build has to be great in GMs to be good.
But in PvE, it's a powerful thing that it does. And what I want and need you to remember, aside from a GM, and super side note, for whatever reason, like whatever reason at all, I don't know why people have to say this, oh, I would never take that in a GM. Sure, you probably shouldn't, but let's not act like everyone every single day loads up Destiny and plays only GMs, because you don't. There's a lot of activities to do.
Some builds are just awesome for low-end content. Stormdancer's Brace, for example. But Cool Guy laid out what it does well and where it shines, which is what all build videos should do. His thumbnail wasn't clickbaity, he wasn't saying Severance was suddenly the best exotic in the game for Titan, he was just talking about the recent changes to it and how to get the most out of it. And in that video, I saw it wrecking ads in things like the Coil or the Warlord's Ruined Dungeon. So it does have a place in the game. It's not shit. It was just shit in the way that I had tried using it. But he was spot on. Not everyone plays endgame content every time they log into Destiny. It is okay to have builds that aren't the meta for GMs, but just be honest about it. Trinity Ghoul is like the Yas of weapons. It is a monster in low-end content, but the higher the power delta goes up, the more it falls off. But T-Ghoul is at least great in low-end content, and Yas is decent in low-end content too, but so is basically any build. And my whole issue is that people think it's good in high-end content because one of the biggest Destiny YouTubers told people that it is, and it's just not true. Llama put out a video called the Cowboy Build, and it was just the last word with Lucky Pants. I love when builds have a theme, and this was all about being a gunslinging cowboy, complete with the 6-shooter golden gun and all. But in that video, he talked about its strengths and weaknesses, what it did well, and the kind of content that it excels in. And the title even says it's super fun, which fucking rights it is. It's so fun pumping out huge damage with the last word, using a weapon that is barely used in PvE and making it shine. I love shit like that. I should start doing more of my own fun off-meta builds. Builds that are fun and unique, but not the strongest thing in the game. My favorite thing to do is get the most out of any exotic, and that is what Llama did with that video. Where Mobalytics hypes up young Ahamkara's spine like it's great when any real endgame player knows it's shit. But just be honest about it. Don't say it destroys GMs because it doesn't. And outside of Caretaker or maybe Atheon because he takes more ability damage as well, there isn't any meta player using this in raids. Probably my biggest inspiration for my channel was Error, but he phoned it in a while ago and makes clickbait builds as well. He takes them through the Exodus Garden 2A Lost Sector on the Cosmodrome because it's ad dense with super weak enemies that is great for showing off any build. And again, that's fine if you're honest about the build's capabilities, but these YouTubers often are not. So this video was just to point out why young Ahamkara's spine is not actually a good build for endgame, and hopefully people stop hyping it up like it's awesome. And I wasn't lying in the title either. This build did change the way I play Destiny. I usually like to use builds that are good, and this one had me playing like a pleb. This is also not to hate on Mobalytics. Different people like different playstyles, and I do not like trip mines in PvE because they are bad. But if he likes them, then all the power to him. He is free to make videos on whatever he thinks is great. I just wish he wouldn't lie to over 500,000 people in the Destiny community and gaslight everyone into thinking this build is good. It is honestly detrimental to LFGs everywhere. You'll have people dying and tons of GMs trying to use a subpar build because a person who they trust told them that it's strong. That is my issue. He just happens to have the biggest reach, so I feel he has a responsibility to be honest. But like I said, people can make whatever fun and unique or powerful builds they want to make. I'm no gatekeeper. And on that note, I have a different exotic arm hunter build that goes exceptionally hard, especially this season. And unlike young Ahamkara's spine, this one actually does wreck in GMs. I wanted to release these videos over Christmas, but I got way too busy. So sadly, this build will only be at its peak for a few more weeks until the artifact changes. But it has quickly become one of my favorite builds this season. Be sure to subscribe and hit the bell so you don't miss it. It's honestly awesome. I've soloed GMs with it as well as Kel's Fall on Expert, so it definitely gets my stamp of approval. Anyways, I'll catch you in the next one. Take care. Hey, if you're still here, then thanks so much for watching to the end. If you like what I do and you want to support me further, then consider becoming a channel member. You'll get your name featured on the end screen, custom badges, and other cool rewards. You can also join my community Discord if that interests you, and if you want to see me stream, be sure to follow me on Twitch at itstizzle7 where I stream semi-regularly. Those are linked in the description. Anyways, that's enough self-promotion. Thanks for watching. Take care.